There is a place where the world falls silent, a place where the wind speaks in forgotten tongues, and the ice breathes with slow, ancient lungs, where the sea wears a silver veil, and every ripple carries the weight of centuries. This is the Arctic, a realm suspended between life and death, warmth and frost, touch and isolation. And beneath its surface she waits. Her name is whispered only in hush and reverence, carried by hunters as they slip across the frozen skin of the ocean. They do not speak of her loudly, they do not dare, for the sea is hers and she listens. They call her Sedna, goddess, spirit, maiden, monster. She has worn all these names and none. Her hair flows in the deep like kelp caught in sorrow. Her fingers, long severed, have become whales, seals, walruses, and all the creatures the Inuit depend on to live. She is the mother of the sea, and the mourning bride of it. She does not forgive easily. She does not forget. But who was she before? Before the deep swallowed her and crowned her with salt and darkness. Before betrayal became her breath and silence her throne. This is where our story begins. Not with gods or thrones or blood-soaked wars, but with a girl. A girl with hair black as raven feathers and eyes like storm glass, clear and sharp. Her skin was pale as snow, warm against the cold. She lived not in the sea, but above it, in a coastal village where the land meets the ocean with reverence and restraint. A land of bones and spirits, of stories told by firelight and winds that sing of things lost long ago. She was a daughter of a father who feared the ocean more than he feared the sky, of a mother who left too early, whose voice echoed only in dreams. Sedna was not like the others. There was something untamed in her, something that could not be sewn into the ordinary rhythms of village life. She listened to the sea, not with dread, but with longing. Where others saw hunger and danger, she saw beauty, depth, freedom. Each morning she would walk alone to the shore, letting the frost bite at her feet. She would kneel in the snow, not to pray, but to listen. She swore the sea spoke to her, in rhythm, in breath, in pulse. It lulled and called and soothed and promised. No one believed her. No one listened. And still she returned, again and again, drawn to the rhythm, the mystery, the voice that lived in the tides. A voice that sounded like her own name, spoken from beneath the waves. She was of the land, but not for it. There is a wound in every myth, a place where the world is torn open, just enough for the sacred to slip through. Sedna's story is that wound. It is not a tale of triumph, nor one of victory. It is a story of love betrayed, of innocence swallowed by salt, of pain that becomes power. Before she was goddess, she was girl. Before she was revered, she was ruined. But it is the ruin that remakes her. And so the question lingers, quiet, like a tide swelling in the dark. What happens when love and betrayal are drowned in the same sea? What is born from that silence? What shape does sorrow take when it has no land left to rest upon? In the northern dark, the whales still sing her name. They do not speak, but they remember. The seals dive with her blessing or vanish with her wrath. And the fishermen, they offer bone and oil, chants and blood, hoping she will spare them, hoping she still feels mercy in her cold, unyielding heart. But Sedna's mercy is not soft. It is not warm. It is like the sea itself, vast, unknowable, and without apology. She waits in the deep, hair flowing like ink across the floor of the ocean, eyes open, never blinking. Her heart does not beat as ours do. It pulses with currents, shifts with tides, sighs with the weight of lost names. She remembers the cold hands that pushed her, the screams swallowed by waves, the severing, the silence, the transformation. And still she waits, because myths are not just stories we tell to children. They are truths wrapped in poetry. They are wounds we decorate, hoping to make meaning from pain. Sedna's myth is not ancient because it is old. It is ancient because it is eternal. Because the ocean still cradles broken girls. Because betrayal still comes from those we trust. Because we still do not know how to love something wild without trying to own it. And because sometimes the only way to survive is to sink. Sink into the dark, sink into the cold, sink so deep that your name changes, your body changes, and your sorrow becomes a kingdom. Sedna did not choose the sea, but the sea chose her. And in her descent, something sacred was born, a goddess not of light, but of depth, not of forgiveness, but of memory, not of warmth, but of elemental, enduring truth. When you stand by the Arctic shore and hear the ice groan under its own weight, when the wind strokes your skin like a lost lover, when the whales rise and vanish without a trace, you are near her. You are near the place where myths breathe, where gods weep in silence, where love is remembered only through its fracture. This is her beginning, not of life, but of undoing, of drowning, of becoming. And even now she waits for those who will listen, not with ears, but with bones, with blood, with breath that shivers at the edge of the world. Can you hear her? Beneath the ice, beneath your skin, she is there. She always was. And now that you know her name, she will never let you go. Before she became myth, Sedna was a daughter of the ice and wind. She was not born into greatness. No crown marked her brow. No flame touched her skin. Her only inheritance was the hush of snowfall and the silence of loss. Her mother had passed before Sedna could form memories, leaving behind a hollow warmth and a faint scent of seal oil and smoked furs. What remained was her father, a man carved by weather and weariness, full of shadows and silence. But Sedna, she was alive in a way the cold could not smother. Her hair fell in heavy black waves down her back, thick and unruly as seaweed. Her skin held the soft flush of one who lingered too long near the fire, and yet her heart beat to the rhythm of the waves outside her tent. She moved with the looseness of a dream and the boldness of something half feral. The villagers said she was too beautiful for her own good. They meant it as a curse. Boys watched her with hunger they didn't understand. Girls watched her with fear they wouldn't name. She was not cruel, but there was something in her gaze, some slow burning defiance that unsettled the fragile balance of the village. She wanted more. Not riches, not titles, not the rough-handed affection of clumsy suitors. She wanted wind in her mouth. She wanted to disappear into the sea and return as something no one could name. She wanted freedom, not in words, but in breath, in flesh, in every beat of her trembling ribs. And that made her dangerous. Her father, whose name had once carried weight among hunters, was no longer strong. The years had worn him thin, and loss had hollowed him further. His love for Sedna was real, but it was shaped by fear. He saw her as delicate, as breakable, as something that must be tethered before it could be taken. He warned her of the ocean's hunger, of men's cruelty, of spirits that wore the shapes of wolves and lovers. But his warnings came wrapped in silence, not in warmth. He tried to contain her, to mold her into something safer, something quieter. And each time he pulled her closer, she slipped further away. Their bond was a thread stretched thin, fragile and trembling, vibrating with the weight of love too tightly held. He wanted to protect her, but in the end, he would be the one to break her. The sea was never just the sea to Sedna. It was breath, it was voice, it was skin against skin in the dark. She would sit for hours at the edge of the land, her bare feet dug into snow, her fingers tracing invisible lines in the air. Listening, always listening. The waves called to her in sounds no one else heard. Low murmurs, soft gasps, aching sighs. They touched her as no human ever had, without hesitation, without shame. The ocean did not ask her to be small. It did not tell her she was too much. It welcomed her as she was, burning, restless, full of questions and salt. There were others too, men who sought her hand or her body or her obedience. One came with furs and meat, boasting of his catches. Another brought carved ivory and dead eyes. One whispered promises of warmth beneath his breath, but his gaze wandered to her hips before it found her eyes. Each saw her as a prize, a symbol, a solution. They did not see her, and she refused them all. Not cruelly, not loudly, but with quiet certainty. Their touch felt wrong. Their words rang hollow. Only one suitor lingered in her thoughts, a man from the sky, or so he said, dressed in feathers and speaking of distant islands and freedom beyond the stars. His smile was soft, but his eyes were deep and strange. He promised escape. He promised her a life without walls. His voice tasted like snowmelt and smoke. She did not say yes, but she dreamed of him often, of flight, of wind, of falling into a sky that never ended. She began to wake with her lips parted, as if mid-kiss, her fingers curled in sleep, her skin flushed with desire that had no name. And her father saw the change in her, the way her silence deepened, the way her eyes stared longer at the waves, at the sky, at the edges of things. He grew afraid, not of her, but of losing her, the same way he lost her mother, the same way all things eventually slip into the dark. So he grew harsher, more desperate. He shouted where once he pleaded. He clutched where once he guided. His love turned heavy, like snow piling on a tent roof, threatening collapse. And Sedna, she began to break. Not all at once, not with noise, but slowly, quietly, the way ice cracks beneath your feet before it gives way. There were other watchers too, spirits half-formed and whispering, curled in the dark corners of the world. A fox with eyes like coals watching from the trees. A gull with wings dipped in ink, crying out her name in wind-torn syllables. A shadow in the water, just beneath the surface, waiting. These beings did not speak plainly, but they circled her fate like wolves around a fire. They saw what was coming. They knew what must happen, for a girl like Sedna could not remain unchanged, could not remain untouched. The village felt it even if they could not name it. The tension in the air, the stillness before a storm, the way animals paused when she passed, as if listening to a sound they remembered from before they were born. She was no longer just a girl. She was becoming something else, something sacred, something doomed. And the sea, patient as always, watched with hunger. It had seen girls like her before. Wild things, soft things, strong enough to love the world, but too fierce to let it break them. The sea does not take gently, but it always takes. These were the players. A daughter of longing, a father of fear, a sea that knows no mercy, and shadows that dance at the edges of choice. They are not heroes or villains. They are pieces of a wound that is still healing, a question still being asked. And somewhere in the deep, Sedna's hair stirs in the dark, waiting. The wind never stopped screaming that night. It clawed at the edges of Sedna's tent, lifted the furs from her bed, whistled through the bones of the world. Even the dogs whimpered and pressed their bellies to the snow. The air carried something more than cold. It carried a warning. She did not sleep. She hadn't, not truly, in days. Her dreams were full of wings and drowning, of a man with feathered shoulders and burning eyes, of her father's face turned away, of salt against her tongue, of cold creeping in where love should have lived. Something inside her was breaking, stretching taut across the ache in her chest. She felt pulled in two directions, toward the sea that called to her in whispers and sighs, and back toward the fragile warmth of home, where the fire still glowed in the center of their small, quiet world. But home no longer fit, and the sea knew her name. Her father had grown stranger.
His eyes shifted away when she entered. His hands trembled when he spoke. He avoided the shoreline now, and though his mouth said nothing, his silence pressed against her skin like a bruise. Something was coming. She felt it in her bones. She felt it in the way the village avoided her now, eyes lowered, voices hushed, as if they too had heard the whispers in the night. Still, she resisted. She resisted the marriage he had tried to arrange, the quiet hunter with hands like stone and no soul in his voice. She resisted the shrinking, the silence, the obedience that was expected of her. She resisted the quiet, constant crushing of the girl she had been into something small enough to keep. Even when her father begged, even when he cursed, even when he wept in the dark, thinking she could not hear him, she resisted, because there was a fire in her that would not die, because her body remembered the way the sea touched her dreams, because something inside her refused to kneel. But the sea was not the only thing with hunger, and men, when afraid, are capable of terrible things. The sky-suited man returned one final time, his voice filled with urgency, his promises wrapped in feather and frost. "Come," he whispered, "there is no future for you here." And her father who had once carried her on his back through blizzards, who had held her hands over the fire and sung her to sleep, said nothing. He looked into the flames. He did not meet her eyes. He only said, "Go." The boat was waiting, a strange, silent vessel made of bone and driftwood, floating just beyond the ice. The skyman held out his hand. She hesitated. She turned back just once. Her father was gone from the shore. The fire behind her had gone cold. So she stepped in. The sea at first was calm. It welcomed her like a lover, soft waves curling against the sides of the boat, breath warm beneath her feet. The man sat beside her, close, too close. His eyes glittered like wet obsidian. His fingers brushed her arm. But his touch was wrong. It felt like stone, cold, heavy, ancient. She looked at him and saw nothing, no reflection, no warmth, no true face, only hunger, only trap.
And then the sea changed. The wind rose, the sky blackened, waves surged like beasts rising from sleep. The boat lurched. The man was gone. Only feathers scattered, dissolving into mist, and Sedna screamed. Not from fear, but betrayal. The boat cracked beneath her, splinters, shrieks, water clawing at her skin. She turned to the shore, swimming with limbs that ached, breath stolen from her lungs. The waves pulled at her like hands. And there, on the rocks, stood her father. His face was gray. His arms outstretched. She cried to him, pleaded, "Father, please." For a moment, his eyes softened. He took a step forward. Then he turned, and with both hands he broke the boat's edge. The sea took her. Not gently, not fast, but with cruel patience.
Her fingers grasped at the side of the canoe, nails tearing, bleeding. She clawed at the wood. She screamed his name, not once, not twice, but again and again, until the word became salt in her throat. He raised his paddle and struck her hands again, again, until her grip broke, until she slipped beneath the waves, until only the wind remained and the sea closed its mouth around her. Down, down into the dark she fell. The cold was not sudden, it was slow, seductive, like a hand brushing her thighs, then her ribs, then her throat. It entered her mouth like a kiss. It filled her lungs with silence. It wrapped her hair around her like a bridal veil and pulled her deeper still. She did not die. She was transformed. Her body lengthened, her fingers stretched and split, her legs dissolved into currents, her voice fractured into the cry of whales and the hiss of ice. Pain blossomed across her body like petals, sharp, red, blooming into something new. She did not become a corpse. She became memory. She became myth. She became goddess. But she mourned. Oh, how she mourned. She mourned her father, not for what he had done, but for what he had been, for the man who once carried her through storms, who once held her while she wept, for the lullabies long forgotten, for the safety that was never real. She mourned the body she had known, the warmth of fur, the feel of feet in snow, the taste of fish oil on her tongue. She mourned the girl she had been, the one who had loved the sea like a sister, the one who believed love could not betray her. Now she knew better. Now she had salt instead of breath. Now she had teeth instead of tears. The spirits of the ocean circled her, awed and afraid. They saw what she had become. They brought her bones of the drowned and pearls shaped like hearts. They sang to her in the language of waves and called her Mother of the Deep. She did not answer, not at first. She listened. Listened to the rhythm of tides, to the ache in the belly of the world, to the weeping of seals and the laughter of orcas. She let her hair spread like kelp through the water. She let her pain become a kingdom. Above, her name became a warning. Fathers told their daughters not to wander the shore too long. Men whispered of a woman in the waves who punished the cruel, who drowned the greedy, who twisted the tides with a flick of her fingers. They feared her. They worshipped her. They called her Sedna. But Sedna remembered. She remembered what it meant to be touched and abandoned. She remembered the warmth of promises and the sting of betrayal. She remembered the cold creeping into her bones as her father let her slip. She remembered how desire could drown and how love, twisted by fear, could destroy. And so she waits in the deepest part of the sea, not asleep, not dead, but becoming. Her hands, long and graceful now, stir the bones of whales. Her breath, soft and endless, shapes the tides. Her eyes open slowly in the dark, and she remembers. The firelight on her father's face, the way the sea cradled her like a lover, the pain, the longing, the hunger that still lingers. She has not forgiven, but she has not forgotten. Because desire does not vanish. It sinks, it lingers, it sings, and it waits for another hand to reach, for another heart to betray, for another girl to resist the shape the world wants her to become. She is not gone. She is the water. She is the cold. She is the want that never dies. She is Sedna, and her hair still stirs in the dark.
It began with the fingers. First the smallest one, her pinky, torn by the cold, snapped like brittle driftwood as she clung to the side of her father's boat. A blade of wind sliced through it. Blood curled into the water like silk unraveling. She screamed, but no one heard, only the sea. Then the next, ripped away by the paddle, by her father's own trembling hand. Her blood warmed the water, then vanished into the vastness of the deep. Another finger, gone. And another. Each scream a birth, each wound a doorway. By the time her last finger slipped from her hand, Sedna was no longer a girl. She was something else. Each piece of her, once severed, did not die. They sank, slowly, tenderly, and from her blood, from her pain, from the warm flesh stolen by cold water, life blossomed in ways the land could never hold. From her smallest finger, the seal was born, soft-eyed, sleek, with sorrow in its call. From the next, the walrus, tusked and lumbering, its breath thick and ancient. From another, the narwhal, its twisted horn like a cry frozen into ice. From the fourth, the whale, vast, mournful, singing her pain across entire oceans. From the fifth, the orca, sharp, wild, a flicker of vengeance in every glide. And from the last, something unnamed, something deep, something with her voice still echoing inside it. She sank. The cold wrapped her tighter than any lover ever had. It touched every crevice of her body, invaded her mouth, her thighs, her lungs, her belly. It slid across her skin like breath, slick and endless. And though she should have drowned, she did not. The sea took her not to kill her, but to have her. She felt it, not as violence, but as possession, as seduction. It entered her, not only through her lungs, but through her soul. Every pore opened to it, every thought surrendered. She let it in. Let it fill the aching spaces her father had carved open. Let it cradle the pieces of her broken name. The water pressed against her skin, slipped into her mouth, down her throat, filled her womb with salt and moonlight. Her body writhed, not in struggle, but in transformation. Her legs fused, not with pain, but with a heat that defied the cold.
Her breath was no longer breath, but current. She was becoming. Her hair fanned out like black ink in the water, twisting, stretching, joining the seaweed in the slow, eternal dance. Her breasts no longer needed air, but bloomed like coral. Her skin shimmered, part flesh, part ice, part storm. A moan escaped her lips, low, long, not human, but holy. Because this was not death. This was consummation. The sea kissed every part of her that had been betrayed. It wrapped around her thighs, teased her calves, slid between her breasts, and filled the hollows of her hips. It loved her with all the weight of a world that had always wanted her. And for the first time she was wanted for all she was. No more shrinking, no more silence, no more pleasing anyone but herself. She opened her mouth, not to scream, but to receive. And the sea gave her everything. It filled her ears with the language of whales. It filled her eyes with the phosphorescent shimmer of deep things that never saw the sun. It gave her lovers in the form of currents and gods in the form of storms. She touched the ocean floor and felt it pulse beneath her, a slow living rhythm that beat in time with her own heart. And her body responded, arching, stretching, accepting, becoming. Each movement a ritual, each breath a tide, each sigh a wave. Above, the world no longer mattered. There was no father, no shore, no betrayal, only pulse and depth, and the ache of new power rising inside her like a swell before a great wave.
She was no longer prey, no longer daughter, no longer human. She was goddess, and her hunger was no longer shame. It was the rhythm of the ocean, the ache of tides, the draw of the moon. Her arms reached out and the sea answered. Creatures formed around her, born of her pain and her pleasure. Fish with silver eyes, seals that danced in spirals, great whales that sang her name. Her children, all of them, born from the wounds once meant to destroy her. She rose slowly, not to the surface, but to the throne hidden beneath centuries of salt. A palace formed around her, not built but summoned, not of stone but of memory and motion. Its walls made of swirling currents, its roof the belly of icebergs, its throne a bed of bones in soft kelp, scented with the blood of kings and the breath of forgotten storms. And she sat, her spine straight, her mouth half parted, her eyes wide, filled with stars that never burned in the sky. She sat as one who ruled, not just the sea, but the longing inside every creature that touched it. Sailors who gazed too long into the depths dreamed of her hair. Hunters who pierced the flesh of her children felt her whisper in their ear before their boats overturned. Wives who waited on shore heard her voice in the waves and wept without knowing why. She became longing. She became warning. She became the moment before the wave crashes.
The hush before the scream, the cold breath on the neck that reminds you you're mortal. And yet she was beautiful, terribly so, the kind of beauty that hurts to look at, the kind that haunts, the kind that lingers in the blood and refuses to let go. She was not gentle. She did not forgive, but she loved in the way the sea loves, completely, terribly, without end. And if you were lucky enough to be chosen by her, if you entered the water with bare soul and open hands, she might show you things that would change you. She might offer you a kiss made of thunder, or a dream stitched from the breath of whales, or a death so sweet you would not know you were gone. This was her climax, not of violence, but of becoming, of surrender, of sovereignty. Her skin now shimmered with stormlight, her hair tangled with galaxies. Her voice, when she sang, split the ice from the inside out. She had no need of air. She had no need of land. She had only herself and the sea that had taken her, the sea that had made love to her pain, the sea that had crowned her with coral and clothed her in salt. Her body, once broken, now stretched for miles. Her fingers, once severed, now danced with life. Her heart, once shattered, now beat with the pulse of something eternal. Sensuality no longer meant skin or heat or breath. It meant depth. It meant the ache of the abyss. It meant being known, without words, by something too large to name. And fear? Fear became reverence. Terror became worship. Because when mortals glimpse a god in her moment of becoming, they cannot help but fall to their knees. And Sedna, she became not just goddess of the sea, but the sea itself. Every wave her breath, every storm her sigh, every creature her child, and every cry of longing in the night was her name.
The world above the waves had changed forever. No longer was the ocean merely a vast, indifferent expanse of ice and water. It had become a living realm under Sedna's rule. Where once the sea was the domain of men's nets and boats, it was now her kingdom. Her children, seals, walruses, whales, narwhals, orcas, swam in her court beneath the surface, carrying the essence of her pain, her sacrifice, her fierce sovereignty. The currents bent to her will, swirling with a power ancient and eternal. Storms rose and fell with the rhythm of her moods, wild and unpredictable as the beating of her immortal heart. The ice groaned beneath the weight of her gaze, shifting like the breath of a sleeping giant disturbed by the awakening of a forgotten deity. For those who lived along the shore, fishermen, hunters, villagers, the ocean no longer felt like a friend. It was a force to be feared and respected. Their lives, once ruled by the patterns of tides and seasons, now trembled beneath the pulse of a goddess.
They whispered the old tales again, stories passed down through generations, told by firelight to remind them of the price of disrespect. They spoke of the girl who danced with the wind, whose spirit was stolen by the sea and transformed into something divine and terrible. They remembered Sedna's fingers, severed and scattered across the depths, giving birth to the creatures they depended on, the seals they hunted, the whales that fed their families. These creatures were sacred to her now, her children, and any harm brought to them was a wound to Sedna herself. With reverence and dread, the people fashioned rituals to honor her. They left offerings on the shore, bits of food, carved ivory, and whispered prayers carried by the wind. They sang songs that called to her, voices rising over the crashing waves, hoping to appease the goddess who ruled beneath the ice. When the sea was calm and still, some claimed to see her silhouette below the surface, a dark shape with eyes like shimmering stars, watching silently. When storms struck without warning, swallowing boats and men, the villagers knew it was Sedna's wrath. She did not punish lightly, but she was unforgiving. Respect was demanded, and those who disrespected her gifts found only emptiness. Nets came up empty. Seals slipped away into the dark. The hunters' breath caught in their chests as they felt the weight of her gaze, a cold reminder that the sea no longer gave freely. Her power was absolute. The ocean was her body, and she moved within it like a queen on her throne. Sedna's voice echoed in the howling winds and the crackling ice, a song of sorrow and strength entwined. Her story was a caution, a reminder that betrayal and love are bound together, and that transformation often comes through suffering. Her father lived in torment, haunted not by spirits but by guilt. His life became a wandering shadow on the shores he once called home. Each day he walked along the ice, staring into the cold depths where his daughter had disappeared. The sea whispered to him, its voice sharp and accusing. In his dreams, cold hands dragged him beneath the waves. The sky darkened when he approached the water, clouds gathering like a storm, reflecting his own turmoil.
He begged for forgiveness, but none came. No peace was granted, only the endless echo of his betrayal. Yet Sedna did not seek vengeance. She ruled the ocean with the quiet majesty of one who has transcended pain. She was no longer a girl to be saved or mourned. She was a goddess, eternal, untouchable, sovereign. Her wound remained open, a scar that refused to heal. There was no perfect closure, only transformation. Her myth spread far beyond the Arctic shores, carried by travelers, whispered in many tongues. She became a symbol of the wild, of the beauty born from suffering, of love that was fierce and untamed, and of the price of betrayal. To the people who knew her story, the sea was no longer just a place of survival.
It was a sacred realm where the sacred and the terrifying met in an endless dance. Those who sought her favor found bounty, fish in their nets, calm seas and safe passage. Those who scorned her were met with hunger, storms, and silence. The sea was alive with her presence, and in the stillness beneath the northern lights, when the world seemed to hold its breath, the faintest song could be heard. A haunting melody of longing and dominion, a hymn to the depths where Sedna reigned. She was the eternal mistress of the sea, a goddess born from cold, from pain, from endless yearning for freedom. Forever she ruled beneath the waves, her domain of ice and shadow and light. Her children swam in her wake, her power shaped the tides, her voice was the cry of the ocean itself. And the people, though they feared her, loved her too, for she was the wild heart of the sea, fierce, beautiful, and eternal. She was the pulse beneath the ice, the whisper in the wind, the ache in every longing soul who dared to dream beyond the shore. In every wave crashing against the rocks, there was a piece of her story. In every breath of the Arctic air, a reminder that some wounds never heal, but they can give birth to gods. Sedna's myth was not a tale of defeat. It was a tale of becoming, of rising from betrayal and pain to claim a throne beneath the sea, a throne built not of stone, but of sorrow and strength. And beneath the endless sky where the stars dance with the northern lights, her story lives on, a story that calls to those who listen, a story of love and loss, of power and transformation, of a goddess who was never truly lost to the sea. She was the sea, and the sea was her.
In the vast frozen silence of the Arctic, beneath the shimmering curtain of the northern lights, Sedna remains, an eternal presence beneath the waves. She is neither fully lost nor completely found, a goddess born from pain and rebirth, whose story stretches beyond the limits of time and space. She is both victim and queen, a paradox wrapped in the cold embrace of the sea. Her tale is one of tenderness and terror, vulnerability and sovereignty. Her fingers severed, scattered like stars into the deep, each becoming a creature of the ocean, each carrying a piece of her soul. From this sacrifice, life was born. From loss, creation blossomed. From sorrow, power rose. Sedna's myth is a haunting melody, echoing through the endless ice fields, whispered on the biting wind and carried by the ceaseless waves. It is a story not just of a woman cast into the depths, but of a spirit transformed, fierce, wild, and eternal. Her rage is not the blind fury of a heart broken beyond repair. It is a sacred fire, a steady flame born from the depths of betrayal and longing. It is the rage of the earth herself, the restless force of the sea, the unyielding pulse of the life beneath the ice. She is the queen of an underwater realm that is as beautiful as it is unforgiving. Her domain is a place where light fractures into rainbows beneath the surface, where shadows dance with silence, and where creatures of myth swim freely in the eternal twilight. Yet beneath her sovereignty lies the echo of vulnerability,
the memory of a young woman betrayed by the one who should have protected her. Her father's hands, once symbols of love, became instruments of abandonment. This fracture, this ultimate betrayal, shaped her destiny and the destiny of the sea itself. Sedna is a mirror held up to the deepest parts of the human soul, the parts that know pain and loss, but also the parts that rise again, stronger, fiercer, more radiant than before. She asks us quietly, hauntingly, what part of us lives where she fell? Is it the part that trembles in fear, the part that remembers the cold clutch of abandonment, the sharp sting of betrayal, the loneliness of sinking beneath the waves? Or is it the part that rises, the part that burns with fierce defiance, that refuses to be broken, that claims sovereignty over the storms within? Her story is a metaphor for the feminine spirit, complex, multifaceted, and endlessly resilient. She embodies the rage born from loss, the longing born from separation, and the rebirth born from surrender. The sea, her eternal kingdom, is a mirror to our own depths. It keeps what we cast into it, our fears, our hopes, our secrets, our pain. It transforms them as Sedna was transformed into something new, something powerful and eternal. When the world is quiet and the northern lights flicker softly overhead, her voice can be heard not as a roar, but as a whisper, a haunting, delicate sound that stirs the soul and lingers like a fading dream. Her whisper calls to the part of us that remembers, the part that knows how to surrender and yet remain unbroken. She teaches us that true power is born not from control or conquest, but from acceptance and transformation. That pain, when embraced, can become a source of fierce beauty. That loss, when honored, can lead to rebirth. Sedna's myth is a story of becoming, of falling into the dark and rising into the light. It is a story that lives in every wave that crashes against the shore, in every breath of the Arctic wind, in every silence beneath the stars. She is the pulse beneath the ice, the breath beneath the sea, a goddess who is not distant or cold, but deeply present, in the ache of longing, the fire of rage, and the calm of surrender. To know Sedna is to know that within us all lies a sea, vast, deep, mysterious, sometimes stormy, sometimes still. And within that sea there is a part of her, a part that lives where she fell, that remembers the pain, the betrayal, the loss, and that also remembers the power of rising again. In this way, Sedna is not just a goddess of the Arctic Sea. She is a goddess of the human spirit, of the endless cycles of love and loss, death and rebirth. She reminds us that even in the coldest depths, life persists, that even in the deepest sorrow, there is beauty, that even in silence, there is song. And so her story continues, not just in the ancient myths, but in the hearts of those who listen, in the quiet moments when the world seems to hold its breath, when the wind whispers secrets and the sea sings softly beneath the moon.
In those moments, Sedna is there, a soft presence, a haunting echo, a reminder that some wounds never truly heal, but that those wounds can give birth to something eternal, something fierce, something beautiful, something wild. She is the sea. She is the song beneath the waves. She is the eternal queen of the deep. And what part of us lives where she fell? Perhaps it is the part that never forgets, the part that holds sacred the pain and beauty of becoming, the part that dares to dive into the cold and come back transformed, the part that is, like Sedna, both vulnerable and sovereign, forever entwined in the endless dance of shadow and light. Perhaps it is the part of us that feels the sea's relentless pull, not just as a force outside ourselves, but as a reflection of our own hidden depths. That wildness stirring beneath the calm surface, the longing for freedom mingled with the fear of the unknown. Sedna's story is a call to remember that to surrender to our deepest pains does not mean losing ourselves. It means finding the strength to become more than what we were before. Her myth holds a quiet revolution within its folds, the transformation of suffering into sovereignty, of loss into a source of power, of silence into a voice that resonates across time. It is a story that invites us to look beneath the surface of our own lives, beneath the ice that covers the hidden places inside us, to find the goddess within, the part of us that is unbreakable even when broken, fierce even when vulnerable, eternal even in the face of loss. And in this reflection, Sedna teaches us that the sea is not a place of endings, but a place of beginnings, where the cold can cleanse and the depths can nurture, where every broken finger, every shattered piece becomes a seed of new life. She teaches us that within every ending lies the possibility of a new story. Within every silence, the echo of a song yet to be sung. And within every fall, the promise of a rise. So, when the Arctic night stretches endless, and the aurora paints the sky with colors no mortal eye can hold, remember Sedna. Remember the woman who became goddess, who became sea, who became the wild, eternal heart beneath the waves. And ask yourself, softly, in the quiet between the stars, what part of me lives where she fell?